Go ahead.
All right. I'd like to call to order the October 13th, 2020 regularly scheduled meeting of the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission. We are meeting in a hybrid format this evening. So our commissioners are meeting virtually pursuant to Executive Order number 60 from the Governor of Tennessee during the COVID epidemic or pandemic. And we also have staff present live. So public is invited to participate either way, whichever one is more convenient of them. I'd like to begin with an approval of the agenda.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. I'd like to move on to the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Cooper, would you mind leading us in the invocation, please?
Yes, ma'am. Please join me. Lord, we seek blessings on the task before us this evening. Bless our efforts with clear insight, our deliberations with wisdom, our work with clarity and accuracy, and our decisions with impartiality. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Cooper. All right, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the September 8th, 2020 virtual meeting of the Johnson City Regional Planning Commission. The minutes have been distributed. Has everybody had a chance to look those over? Are there any changes, corrections, additions, or deletions to those? Then
I move the minutes be accepted as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dagenhart. Who seconded that? Had several seconds.
Oh, Commissioner Whitfield.
Okay. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify. Aye. Any opposed? All right. There is no old business on the agenda, so we are going to move right into new business. And the first few items are text revisions. The first one deals with daycares. So,
yes, thank you. So as you've seen in your packet, the full text revision proposal was sent to you, includes a number of minor changes. So I'm just going to focus on the major issue at hand. There is a national conversation about dependent care going on in this country. And as staff for the planning department, we, over the last year and a half, 2 years, especially had noticed a lot of issues with zoning as it related to folks wanting to start daycares in Johnson City and not being able to meet the zoning code. And you see these things occur over and over again. And when that happens, it's time to try to address the issue and see if there's some things that can be changed. Well, as we started to focus in on this issue, became more aware of it, we got more quantifiable data that really showed that there was a shortage in Johnson City. It wasn't just anecdotal, and started talking to folks that are in that field that work for the state and also work for daycares here in Johnson City. And we were able to really highlight and put a spotlight on this shortage. That was compounded by COVID-19. The city made it a point, the state made it a point to make sure daycare stayed open during the shutdown. But there was a major closing with ETSU provider, which then put even further burden on our existing supply. if you will, of daycare providers. And so what we wanted to do is say, let's look at our code. Let's recognize that the state heavily regulates daycares already. What does our zoning code say? Is it relevant? Can we justify, or do we have arbitrary regulations in place? And so we took a deep dive look at our zoning code. What we found, this is just quickly following up on the quantifiable data. This is a survey that was conducted by the parents that were affected by the ETSU closing. And I don't expect you to read all of this, but I just want to show you that we do have quantifiable evidence that there's data that there are long waiting lists, people who are without childcare right now. This is a listing of all the private childcares in Johnson City. You'll see in this provider type that they're all listed as centers. And so those are the larger facilities. And we'll get into the definitions of these, but essentially you'll see there are no licensed home providers in Johnson City. So what do we do to address this? First thing we did was, instead of having a generic daycare definition, we're proposing to align our zoning code with the definitions that are used by the state, which outlines specific definitions for family childcare homes, group childcare homes, childcare centers, and drop-in childcare centers. And those four classifications are distinguished by the number of kids that can be serviced. And so there are thresholds that would trigger going into a different classification, and then those classifications have different regulations based on the state. So we're proposing to adopt new definitions. We are aligning the uses for homes, family childcare homes and group childcare homes, in our residential areas, our lower density areas, because those are lower intensity providers. And then we're also cleaning up some of the requirements in the zoning code. So instead of it being a special exception that's needed in order to have a daycare in R1, R2, R2A, R2B, R2C, and R3, we are now shifting it to being a permitted use by right. There was also a provision that required 1.5 acres of land in order to have a daycare. We've eliminated that condition. We've also eliminated the condition that it be located on an arterial or collector. It's not a whole lot of residential property on arterials and collectors. And there's also a screening requirement. The state already requires a 4-foot fence. We did not feel that the screening, which was justified to reduce noise, their noise is not going to be reduced by a fence or even a row of landscaping. So it seemed a bit arbitrary. We also feel like there's some potential safety in actually opening up. If you look at standards for crime prevention through environmental design, which are some national standards for improving public safety, it's all about visibility and improved transparency. And so that screening requirement may have actually had an adverse effect than what was intended. So those are the changes in the lower intensity zoning districts. And then for our higher intensity zoning districts, we've made some changes there was a maximum of 100 kids. We've removed that max. There was a requirement that it could not be located on a cul-de-sac. We've removed that. And then the square footage of the facilities was maxed out at 5,000 square feet. So we've proposed to remove that. And so looking at it in detail, these are the proposed definition changes. As I discussed earlier, removing the single generic definition and aligning with the state's zoning code. This is a breakdown, a table that shows the different thresholds for the different types of facilities. The exact code language is shown here, where on the left, you see the way the code was written, and what's been highlighted are things that we've removed, requirements that have been removed rather than carried over. And so this is the proposed language in green for R1, which would then carry on through our other single family zoning districts all the way through R3. At the R4 zoning district, it would then switch over to this set of conditions and replace the language that's on the left. And so this would apply to R4, R5, all our commercial districts, all of our mixed use districts. Those are our higher intensity zoning districts. So it makes sense that the thresholds, and I'll go back real quickly and kind of line this up for you guys. Family childcare home, which has a max of 7, and group childcare home, which has a max of 12, 15 if there are siblings from the same family. Those would be allowed within our lower intensity zoning districts. And then as you get up to 13 plus, 15 plus, with no maximum, those would be the ones that would then be allowed. In addition to the childcare homes, the centers, childcare center, drop-in childcare center would then be allowed in our higher intensity zoning districts. And that is all reflected in the language that is shown. This went through the legislative committee. There was only one suggested edit, which was a good suggestion that we removed a requirement that referred to deceleration lanes. It was unnecessary, and so we made that change. Other than that, this was fully supported by the committee, and staff is recommending approval of the full packet of changes that was presented to you in your packet, which include cleaning up other sections of the of references to the new definitions, as well as all the areas in the zoning districts where that refer to these 6.7.12 and 6.1.16. Staff recommends approval.
Mr. Manley, if these changes are approved this evening, will these go on to the City Commission for final approval?
Yes, so this is a zoning code change that is done by ordinance, and ordinances require 3 readings at the City Commission after a recommendation is made by the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Are there other questions of staff at this time?
Yeah, Matt, has there been increased discussion from applicants or otherwise about, is that what is driving this? And maybe is that been driven by pandemic where people are kind of scrambling for different childcare resources and otherwise? Can you kind of speak to the background to how this, I think you mentioned it briefly, but just kind of speak to the background of why you guys are requesting this change to the code?
So this is more of a connecting the dots for staff than it is, hey, I'm trying to start a daycare and this zoning code is keeping me from doing it. And so I'm going to hammer away on y'all until you change the code. That is not what is occurring. What is occurring is staff making observations, recognizing an issue, digging into that issue, finding that there are some potential solutions out there that could address the issue, and then moving forward and initiating some of those solutions. We have been joined by a staff person with the state who can speak to kind of the broader issue as well, and kind of back up some of the quantifiable information I showed in my slideshow. But based on my conversations with them, they did confirm that when they go to meet with an interested party who's interested in starting a daycare, oftentimes it'll get to the business licensing stage and they will have to have compliance with the zoning code and the building code in order to get that license. And that's where they often see a breakdown as far as people pursuing licensing at that stage, licensing for childcare. So that further confirmed staff's suspicions that this was a shortage that's being driven by over-regulation. And so what can we do to get out of the way of that? Still make sure that we have compatibility with uses, and that we're doing that based on the level of intensity that's being allowed in different zoning districts. But there is an issue with the building code that's still outstanding, and I'll go ahead and address that quickly. Sprinkler systems are required as a local amendment to the building code in Johnson City. Johnson City requires that any institution have a sprinkler system, and daycares are classified as an institution. So even if you were if you had a family childcare home and you had 6 kids that you watched, you would be required to put sprinkler system in your home. And so that is still a change that we are proposing to strike that local amendment and align our building code with the International Residential Code, so that if there is proper ingress and egress, then you would be exempt from the sprinkler requirement. And that is going to be packaged with the adoption of the 2018 building codes, which is set to take place before the end of the year. And so I spoke with the interim chief building official about that. And so we're actively working on the building code side as well as the zoning code side.
So we are not considering that this evening, correct?
That is not something that is under the purview of the planning commission. That would be the city commission.
Okay.
Matt, each one of these 4 categories are required to be licensed at the state level?
Yes. Anything under 5 does not require licensing, but once you hit 5, it then kicks in and you need a license. And you would be classified in one of those 4 based on the number of children served.
Okay. Matt, have you received any feedback via email regarding this?
I have not.
Okay. And Wendy, I know we haven't said the public hearing was officially open, but we have had the screen open. Has anybody called in and wished to speak at the public hearing?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and I'm assuming there is no one present in person that wishes to speak either?
We do have a member of the state Department of Health and Human Services.
Yes, childcare license.
Yeah, so if you would allow her to speak briefly to you and kind of address this issue, it would be appreciated.
Yes, please, we would like very much. If you just wouldn't mind by beginning by giving us your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name is Elizabeth Clark. I work at 2557 Plymouth Road, the Department of Human Services. I am a program evaluator with childcare licensing. My job entails making sure that licensed childcare agencies follow rules and regulations, and helping assist individuals who would like to open a childcare agency, whether it be a family home, a group home, a childcare center, or a drop-in center. And in our current area, we do not have any drop-in centers. The rules and regulations are very strategic and planned for children's safety. And that's the most important part, is to make sure that when a child care agency is licensed, they follow rules and regulations, they get training, they have a background check, so that the children are safe when they're in child care. The problems that we encounter are illegals is mainly the biggest part that we find. In the people don't know the rules and the laws, so therefore they will keep children in their home, and they'll be keeping more children than they should. And so in that situation, that puts children at risk. And so in that situation, if we find out that someone is not following the rules, then what happens is we go out and do an investigation. And we inform them of the law and the rules. And then lots of times what happens is they don't know. And once they know, then they'll comply with the law. But then if they want to become a licensed child care agency, whether it's a family home, a group home, a child care center, or a drop-in center, if they live in the city of Johnson City, they face a lot of hurdles. And the hurdles are that it's not zoned for family or group care, or if an agency or a person wants to open a center, they find that it's very costly to put in that sprinkler system. And so therefore they're not in a money-making situation, because I'll tell the truth, if you go into childcare, you're not in it to make a lot of money. You're in it because you love to be with children and you want to be there for them and be educational and be there for their safety. You're not making a lot of money. So in those situations, it's cost prohibitive. So they will not and they cannot do any licensed child care agency in the city limits. What we find also is if it's an illegal and they're caring for more than 4 unrelated children, then they're putting children at risk. Children can die. Children can become hurt. That's what we want to prevent. So lessening the restrictions can help to allow people to do those family homes and group homes. Is there any questions?
Could you give us just a rough idea of what percentage of people that you meet with that would like to open some type of child care facility in Johnson City run into the difficulty of our current regulations being prohibitive?
I've dealt with a couple in the last little bit. Now, before the COVID hit, I had one lady. She was interested in a building that was once a dance studio, and it's beside of, it's down the road from Walmart on West Market Street. And so she wanted it to be a center. I went in, I did a consultation with her, and the sprinkler system was going to cost her $100,000. And you can't afford to do that. Then I've dealt with myself and another program evaluator had a person who wanted to expand. They have a group home in Greenwood, and they wanted to expand into Johnson City and found that the property they were looking at was in the city. So therefore they started looking and asking questions, and then therefore we told them that it's not zoned for. So they had to go somewhere else, and she still hasn't been able to find a building. And that's the part that is, there's fire and state, health inspector and the state fire marshal have rules and regs that are for the safety of the children. And so not every building is a safe building for children. They have to have 2 forms of egress depending on the age of the children. If it's under 30 months, you have to have more egress, out of a room. And so with the rules and the ordinances the way they are, we just tell people whenever they contact us and want to open a place, we say, give us the address, and we kind of just go from there and give them, well, that's in the city. This is the obstacle. And if you wanted to do a family or a group home, it's not within the ordinance.
Thank you.
And just one quick question. Do you feel that any of these changes would anyways jeopardize the safety of children? Or do you think they're all just going to be overall alleviate the burden on childcare providers?
Oh, I think it would be a great thing to add family and group homes, and it could save lives. I mean, children that are kept in a family home, unregulated, illegal, they're not getting the training that they need. They're not getting background checks. And, children die every day from SIDS and things like that. So it's important that when children are being taken care of in a licensed child care agency, they're getting that training that is required. If they're a family home or, keeping less than 4, or they're an illegal, they're not getting that training, and that puts children at risk.
Thank you.
So at least part of the methodology here is that by allowing a bigger portion of primarily our residential community to allow childcare, we're going to reduce the illegal practices.
Yes, sir.
Is that?
Yes.
And have you had good examples of that in other communities?
Yes. We actually have 2 in Greene County. There were myself and another program evaluator. We went on an illegal, and this was before COVID, and we went, and she was keeping I believe 7 or 8 children, 2 of which were her grandchildren. And so we informed her of the law. We gave her the law. She signed a child care statement of operations saying that she would no longer keep children and that were not related to her, and she would get within the law. During that time, she worked on getting her home approved for a family child care, and is now a wonderful agency. And then we have another one that is in the process, but because of COVID, it's taking a little longer.
Thank you.
Matt, do you have any examples of cities that have undertaken this approach? And in those cases, was there any concern from neighborhoods or residents that you're aware of?
No specific, policy comparison was done for this. This was more just looking at internally looking at Johnson City and looking at our local needs. There was kind of anecdotal, staff informed experience that informed a lot of this just from living in other places and experiencing different things. But we did not do a policy comparison. Be glad to look into that further at the city commission level.
I don't think it's necessary tonight. I think we're pretty supportive of this, but I'm sure there's going to be some questions, especially if you have 3 readings and people are going to want to know if I moved in a neighborhood and now there's a business to my right or left that where children are kept, especially in the R2s. I think we just need to be ready for that. And the second thing is with the changes in the building codes. I know that's been on the docket, if you will, for a long time. And I think we're getting closer. Is there any need to take an approach of trying to get that fixed before we tackle the entire building code changes? Because I'm not sure that's going to, well, let me ask it as a question. Do you think we're going to be able to accomplish that before the end of the year?
In the grand scheme of things, that amendment change should be relatively minor, and it would just be rescinding a local amendment to the building code and just going with the building code itself. So now it'd be great to get it done sooner, but I think with the timing, we're in, mid-October. I think things are tracking forward with that. I think it fits in nicely with that. If we weren't doing a full adoption of the building code, then we'd probably be having a different discussion. But since we're already doing that, I think they tie together nicely. Preston, do you agree?
Yeah, and I mean, it would not be a separate amendment. It'll be part of the full amendment, but Dave is bringing that. It's expected to come forward before the end of the year.
Yeah. So Preston concurs. It would all be a single amendment for the 2018 and all the appendices and everything that'll be attached with that. It'll be built into that.
Matt, this is Clay. Just to confirm, daycare centers are a permitted use in these districts currently,
Yeah,
correct?
so
And all we're doing is relaxing some of the restrictions to our local code. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, we've effectively prohibited them, but they are a use that's allowed by special exception if you meet the conditions. The conditions are such that we've effectively prohibited it in a large majority of residential areas.
Okay, so if I live in an R2 neighborhood and my neighbor wants to start keeping, 7 kids unrelated, right now they could do that as long as they met you got a special exemption and met the restrictions inside of our code, inside of our local code.
If your neighbor lived on an arterial collector and had an acre and a half of land,
right?
There are large lots, but that's pretty limiting. And they would also have to have a sprinkler installed. And so that's really those two things combined, the building code and the zoning code, make it pretty much impossible to have a
pretty restrictive
facility. And so the other aspects that are important to consider, that the state requires that there be a certain amount of square footage per child, that there be a certain number of teachers per child, a certain amount of outdoor play space, square footage per child. So there are going to be these other factors that exist within the state law and the state regulations that are going to limit the number of kids. So your house, let's say we change the zoning code, we change the building code. You can now have, you have a proper ingress. You don't have to put in a sprinkler system. You want to start a group childcare home, and, based on the square footage of your house, you can only have 6 kids. You can't max out at 12. You'd have to have a pretty big house to be able to hit the extreme numbers of even the residential use. So there are other criteria and conditions that are in place at the state level that keeps us from having to regulate it and have, extra local barriers to entry. The state is already regulating that for the welfare of the children. And that's done for the welfare of the children, but I think it also ends up creating this compatibility effect in terms of the intensity of the use within a residential district.
Sure. Finally, I would add congratulations on being 40% of the way to a family childcare home coming up there soon. Mr. Manley.
That's what I'm doing. I'm trying to set up a child.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Matt, are there any other email comments that have come in while we've been discussing? And I'll also ask Wendy, has anybody called in live to speak?
No, ma'am.
Okay, then we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing officially. And I will open it up to any discussion amongst commissioners, or we are looking for a motion.
I just have one question. And just to confirm, I'm just a little confused. I'm sorry, Mr. Manning. We're not addressing the sprinkler systems in these amendments. Is that correct?
That's a building code change, which is done by the city commission. And so that would be that is tracking to be part of their adoption of the 2018 building code, which is set to be done before the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. Can I make a motion to approve the suggested edits to the Article 6, use requirements for districts on daycare centers as presented by staff.
And just, if I may, it also includes Article 2 definitions, Articles 9, 11, and 12, where we reference daycares for parking, sidewalk requirements, and landscaping.
Did you get that,
like to-
Nicole?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor to approve the zoning text amendments as presented by staff as they apply to daycare centers. Is there any additional discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, would you please call the roll, Nicole?
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mays. Is he here?
I don't believe he's here.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
and Madam Chair Wild.
Yes.
All right, motion approved.
Okay. Seeing that, we're going to move on to the second item under our new business, and these are text revisions regulating shipping containers for storage. So again, I'll turn it over to staff for their presentation.
Thank you. This is another text amendment where we're looking at kind of a national trend for the reuse of shipping containers. These are metal structures that are produced in order to ship goods by truck and by boat all over the world. Once they've served that purpose, you still have a really well-built, intact metal structure that is going nowhere. And so folks are reusing them, and it's been considered an approved building material by the ICC. And so recognizing that, we took a look at our zoning code and realized that we outright prohibit the use of shipping containers for storage. Just to go ahead and address one issue, that they can be used as a dwelling under our current building code. They would have to be engineered. And so you'd have to get engineered drawings in order to use them. And we don't have anything that addresses shipping containers being used as a dwelling in our zoning code. So the only change we're proposing is to address the code as it relates to storage. And what we've done is we've updated our definition, and we're really utilizing a grading system that there are a variety of international agencies that evaluate or create standards for the conditions of shipping containers. Once they've gone through their transportation of goods life, then they're evaluated for the condition they're in. Once that's done, and once they're on a secondary market to be resold, they can be categorized in different grades. And so while there are a variety of these agencies that review the condition or set the standards for their condition, all of them are similar in that a grade A is going to have very minor issues with rust and dents and scratches, and it's going to be good structurally, versus a grade B where you may see a little bit more of a medium levels of exterior damage, and then more excessive corrosion and things in a grade C, all relative to this grading scale. And so even with that said, this is all exterior aesthetic condition, not necessarily any kind of structural issues. And so recognizing that there is the grading system, we've proposed some language. We've broken it down into using these for accessory structures, such as a shed in a backyard, or even a storage shed at a business, when it's accessory to a principal use, then 4.13.4 is the code that you would follow. And so essentially it says if they meet grades A, B, and C, then they can be used, but they can be no longer than 20 feet. So shipping containers come in 20-foot or 40-foot sections. So we're saying under this accessory use, they have to be the 20-foot length. The reason for that is that if 40-foot length would be immediately out of character with a residential use, just due to the shape. And so we want these to be compatible. And in order to further ensure that compatibility, it would require that they be clad. And so the outside of the metal would be completely enclosed using either wood, like a hardy plank siding, or brick or stone. And so it would be completely wrapped in cladding. It would also be required to have a pitched roof. And so all that does is help tie it into mesh within a residential setting or even a commercial setting, rather than have the aesthetic of metal shipping container. And so this allows us to permit the reuse of these, which is just a sustainable way of repurposing existing materials, makes us good stewards, but it also allows us to continue to maintain compatibility in our various zoning districts. So that is accessory, that when used as an accessory structure. We're also proposing that they would be allowed as a principal structure with the use of self-storage or mini warehousing. Self-storage and mini warehousing is an existing use that is permitted by special exception in the B4 and is a permitted use by right in the I1 and I2. And we've proposed additional language which would allow shipping containers to be used in self-storage and mini warehousing construction. And then we've got different conditions based on the grade. So if it's grade A, then there would be no additional conditions. These are the reused shipping containers that are in the best condition. If it's grade B with some superficial rust and maybe a few dents and scratches, it can be painted, which then brings the quality of the appearance up. If it's grade C, then it would have to be clad, so it covers up any big major dents or any damage. And so in combination, so we would look at the standards that they used for the condition, and we would evaluate that and then apply the conditions that correspond. This also went through committee. I had full support from the legislative committee, and staff recommends approval.
Mr. Manning, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
You were just talking about the permitted by use, a special exception. Is that just for B4 or is that for all zones?
That is just for the B4. So the B4 has additional conditions which also help protect the aesthetic of various zoning of the B4 zoning district.
Is there a reason that you guys do not require the pitched roof for the B4?
Just because existing storage, self-storage does not require a pitched roof.
Okay, thank you.
So it would be similar to what's pictured in the presentation. It looks just like any other self-storage mini warehousing. These just happen to be made out of shipping containers. And it looks like they probably just cut the front off and then put a different rolling garage front up. And so they can be modified. You can put windows in them, cut different, have different configurations and things like that.
Great, thank you.
Just to touch on that real quickly, the B4 special exception has 4 existing conditions. One is all service storage units and mini warehouse buildings shall be constructed perpendicular to the street where the visual impact is the greatest. That's in order to lessen the visual impact. No exterior storage is allowed except for RVs and boats. And the site shall be fenced as a minimum, and as a minimum, a type 1 evergreen buffer shall be provided on 3 sides. No buffer shall be required on the front property line. However, a row of evergreen shrubs spaced a maximum of 5 feet on center and approved by the city forester shall be provided adjacent to the fence. And parking shall be avoided for accessory uses and shall not be permitted in required setback areas. So in combination, we're proposing that we add E, a 5th condition to that list that permits shipping containers that has additional conditions of its own.
Matt, would a 20-foot semi-trailer without the wheels and axles under it qualify?
No. This would have to be, it would have to meet the definition of a shipping container. That is a good point. We do not define shipping container. So we may want to consider adding a definition. But that may be covered under the grading system. If it doesn't meet the grading system, then it wouldn't be permitted in any, as accessory or as a principal structure.
But that's a shipping industry standard, right? The grading system.
Yes, correct.
So do you know if that system,
Connex.
excuse me, go ahead.
We're talking about like Connex shipping containers,
Right.
exclusively.
But that industry standard doesn't rate trailer enclosures.
No, it's only for shipping containers.
It might be worth saving some argument later on to somehow make a distinction or a clarification.
Yeah, I'd agree.
That's a good point.
Can we use them as childcare centers?
You should have added that as an amendment to the last.
So
I would be open
trying to make a little extra money, Clay.
I got a little backyard space back here and enough kids. So.
That would certainly, be some language that could be added to the definition that, this does not apply to, 18-wheeler without a underbelly. What's it called? A chassis. Yeah. Something that's, been removed from a chassis would not qualify.
May I suggest we define exactly what a shipping container is rather than trying to state all the possible exceptions of what would not qualify?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we can add Connex to the definition and clean that up and bring it back. Or we can do it as an amendment to what's been proposed. Just add Connex shipping, just put the word Connex in here. Connex shipping, where the green under the definition as written says self-service storage. We're adding the words and mini warehousing to align it with what's shown as a use in the zoning code. Means a building or group of buildings divided into, I don't have it on here. Continue. A building or group of buildings divided into separate compartments, each with a separate exterior entrance, used to meet the temporary storage needs of business and residential uses. What we've proposed to add to that is shipping containers may be utilized for self-storage / mini warehousing. Grading systems related to the condition of the shipping container shall be in accord with industry-leading standards. I would propose that to make this clarification that we add the word Connex in front of shipping containers in the newly proposed language. So it reads, Connex shipping containers may be utilized for self-storage / mini warehousing. grading systems related to the condition of shipping containers shall be in accord with industry leading standards.
And if I could. Hello there, planning commissioners. So just while Matt was up at the podium, I was looking this up. Yes, just adding the word Connex in front of shipping container should take care of it. The Connex box was developed in the 1940s by the Transportation Corps of the U.S. Army, and it was used, it's been used since then, and then gotten into the private sector, and is primarily the shipping container, the shipping box used to ship goods all over the world. So that is a general enough term. When you Google shipping container or Google Connex box, that speaks specifically to that type of shipping container. So if we added the word Connex in front of shipping container, it would certainly clear that up.
And that's going to apply to both many storages as well as individual locations.
Right. The Connex box is just the superstructure. So you can see there on the screen that Matt's got up. The Connex box is the container itself, and then it's modified by either having the cladding or windows or roll-up doors or whatnot. But the box, when it gets delivered, you know, just looks like the traditional global shipping Connex box.
Thanks.
Matt, while we continue discussing this, can we put up the screen to allow for public input in case anybody wishes to call in or send an email that would, in this regard? Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna allow discussion to continue amongst commissioners or additional questions of staff. But I'm also officially opening a public hearing. Again, we are meeting in a hybrid format, so public is welcome to participate in person at the commission chambers, to send email comments, or to call in if they wish to speak live at this time. So are there additional comments or discussion amongst commissioners?
I don't have any.
Okay.
No emails have come in.
No emails. Wendy, anybody call in?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I have a quick question for staff. Mr. Manning, is it easy enough to tell, will there be like papers to report whether a shipping container is graded A, B, or C, so we can make the corresponding adjustments when it's placed?
They would submit a building permit and it would require that information.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing or hearing nobody calling in or sending any correspondence, we're going to officially close the public hearing. And so at this time, I am opening the floor either for additional discussion or looking for a motion regarding this text amendment.
I guess I'll be the one. I'll make a motion to approve the zoning text amendment regarding for Article 2 regarding the as it relates to shipping containers.
And just to clarify again, it would include Article 4 and Article 6 revisions as well. Article 4 is where we would strike the prohibition on more mobile storage units. And then just to also clarify that we would be adding to the definition Connex,
C-O-N-E-X,
or Connex type,
just Connex.
C-O-N-E-X.
Before the word shipping container.
That's correct.
Okay, let me try this again. Motion to approve the zoning text amendment as it relates to Article 2, Article 4, and Article 6 as presented by the city, with the amendment that it contain the definition or the term Connex, C-O-N-E-X.
Well done.
Very good.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
yes,
and Madam Chair Wild.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay. Our next item of new business is a final plat, and it is a request to approve the final plat for the cottages at Greenwood Phase 1. You're up, staff.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to take my mask off just because it's hard to talk sometimes. You have on the screen the proposal before you requesting to approve the final plat for just phase 1 of the cottages at Greenwood. As I noted in your agenda summary, you may recall that this came before you and the City Commission as a rezoning last year in end of 2019, rezoned this property to RP3 to allow for this development type. And then the preliminary plat came to you this summer during your special called meeting. I believe it was the July meeting. No, I'm sorry, it was the April meeting. Now, or since then, the developer has been doing all of the horizontal construction, meaning grading and installing water and sewer lines, as well as erosion control and other horizontal measures or civil measures. And so now they're ready to ask for final plat approval. Final plat approval allows them, if granted, and then once it gets recorded, allows them the ability to begin selling lots and then building homes. So we've already gone through the rezoning last year, went through the preliminary plat earlier this year, and now we're at the final plat stage. The final plat that you have in front of you is consistent with the preliminary plat, so there's no issues there. What you have in front of you is the same as what was proposed before. However, staff does recommend that this be approved subject to the developer meeting a couple of conditions. And I'll explain those here in just a minute. The other is that the developer is asking for, and they have the ability or the right to ask for a variance as part of any final plat process or subdivision platting process. This particular developer is asking for the same variance that they requested on the cottages at Cedar Rock. Cottages at Cedar Rock is the subdivision going up on North Roan Street, Kingsport Highway. And with that development, he asked for the side yard public utility and drainage easement to be reduced from 7.5 feet down to 5 feet. So it would be a 2.5 foot reduction on the side, not on the front or the back, but on just on the side. So I'm gonna, using my mouse, I'm gonna point here. There has to be a 7.5 foot ring essentially around all new lots, newly platted lots in the city of Johnson City. And so as he asked for in Cedar Rock, he asked for that side, these interior side lot lines to be reduced by 2.5 feet down to 5, and that was granted. So he's asking for the same thing here, and all other measures in terms of subdivision requirements or zoning requirements have been met. So keep in mind the request to reduce the side yard easement. And then I'll go to the conditions of approval. So it is not atypical for us to be coming forward to you with a request to approve the final plat, and then they still have a couple of punch list items. This is in an effort to be customer friendly, working with our development community, recognizing that time is precious, time is money, and these folks are working hard to get these lots developed so that they can get permits pulled, because there's certainly pressure on their end. The builder that they're working with is working at an incredible pace and producing a great product, and so we're trying to help them get that done. But they're almost there, but we feel confident and comfortable with what's being brought in front of you, especially since there's no change from the preliminary plat. And so these three items would simply need to be done before it can be recorded. There's nothing that would prevent you from approving it, just would need to be done before recordation. Kind of goes back to the very good question that your chairwoman asked during your retreat, and that is when she asked Monty Honeycutt, Monty, are you making sure that we have everything done before we sign this plat? And so in this particular case, this is going to be one of those where we make sure that these things are done before Mr. Dagenhart signs this plat. So number one, they must complete the sanitary sewer install. So I'm going to go back and explain why the sanitary sewer has not been completed. They have come in and installed the sewer lines as normal. But then up here, if you can see my mouse, up here in this kind of northwest corner of the site, they have run into a tremendous amount of rock, subsurface rock. And so that has slowed the install of the sanitary, but they are getting through it. And they just were not able to have that done by tonight's meeting. So it's a small portion. It's this portion up here in this L shape that I'm showing you with the mouse, where they run into rock and are continuing to push forward and expect to have that done in a matter of weeks. The other, and this was information received from the engineering department, that they must post a $25,000 surety bond, which is according to our subdivision regulations, either cash or a irrevocable letter of credit, for two items. One, they need to post a surety bond for the as-built drawings. As-builts those are drawings that are provided to the city that represent physically what has happened on the ground. So just kind of a little bit of 101 here on how subdivisions are built. The preliminary plat gets approved by you all, then the construction plans get submitted and approved by engineering. And then once the construction plans get approved, they're authorized to go out and grade and build. Once they grade and build, their engineer and their surveyor has to confirm that everything was built according to the approved construction plans. That's what as-built drawings are. The as-builts confirm that what is in the ground was what was approved. So we need the as-built drawings to be bonded. And so it is standard for that to be $10,000. That is not unusual. That is a standard dollar amount. The other is for erosion control stabilization. Right now, out there as we sit here tonight and talk, the erosion control basins, I'm going to go back to the map. Both of the erosion control areas, there are two. You'll see there's one right here and then one right here. Both of those, according to our city engineer, are functioning. So they are functioning. They are completed in terms of being functioning units. They just are still dirt and they need to be stabilized. And so they are large areas. And so the request is that that the stabilization, if I can go back to it, that the erosion control stabilization bond be $15,000. So this total of $25,000 would cover, from an engineering perspective, those items, those punch list items. And then the third is that their surveyor and engineer needs to identify a drainage easement across the open space. And I'll go back to the map here. Up here in this top part of phase one, adjoining phase two, if you can see my mouse, there's about a 1/4 acre tract of land that has been identified as open space. And water will be flowing in through this open space in this direction towards this stormwater area. And that's good. That's what it should be doing, is flowing through that open space. There's just no legal method allowing it to continue to do that unimpeded. And so engineering has asked that there be an easement identified across this open space, a drainage easement, allowing that legal unimpeded drainage to occur in perpetuity. So back to the conditions. Now, if and when these conditions are met, then all of the final inspections are done by the appropriate departments, that being either water and sewer or engineering. And then once those are confirmed, if this is approved by you all, then the final approval and confirmation would happen administratively, and then it could be recorded by our office. So it would not need to come back to you. So we submit this to you. This is consistent with the preliminary plan. Their ask, again, is to reduce the side yard drainage and utility easement by 2.5 feet down to 5, which is consistent with previous requests in other subdivisions that he has developed. And then these 3 items staff recommends as conditions of approval. I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Preston, do we need to make 2 different motions on this? One granting the variance for the side yard easement, and then a second one recommending the final plat approval contingent upon those 3 conditions? Or can this be handled in a single motion?
Yes, ma'am. This could all be handled in one fell swoop.
Okay, thank you. Okay, again, if y'all wouldn't mind putting up the slide to allow the public to call in or to send in any comments by email. We'll officially open the public hearing as we continue our questions for staff and discussion amongst ourselves.
Forgive me, I didn't carry that slide over, but here it is.
Thank you very much.
Preston, refresh our memory. What, if I understood correctly, you said it was standard in our zoning codes for the 7.5 foot all the way around the building.
It is in the subdivision regulations, cottage zone, right? And so, yes, that is a standard ring that is requested around all newly created lots in the city for that 7.5 foot drainage and utility easement. And what that does is, in any new subdivision, it effectively gives the city 15 feet. If you think of 2 lots that adjoin, it effectively gives the city 15 feet to be able to go in later and address any drainage concerns or be able to extend public water and sewer lines if needed in the future. And those 7.5 foot utility easements, drainage and utility easements, get used often. So they are very important, but it is not unusual or unheard of, especially with the reference to the other subdivision, for this request to be made for it to be reduced by 2.5 feet.
My memory fails me. What was our rationale to reduce it at Cedar Rock?
That particular rationale predates me, but my presumption is, and again, that's just what this is, but my presumption is that it was based on the fact that Water and Sewer looked at that and saw that there was adequate service to the immediate area. And so the need for additional extensions in that area were not going to be as high. Generally, they will be reluctant to reduce that if there are growth areas beyond. For instance, if Cottages at Cedar Rock is bound really by Hammett Road and North Roan Street or Kingsport Highway. So there was really no going beyond that. And so if you can visualize that particular area. This one, I would argue, is the same situation. This is an 11-acre tract. The full development is, oh, let me do this. Let me go down here. The full development is roughly 11 acres. And so it will be developed in 2 phases, but it is developed completely around. There are water and sewer lines encircling the site. And so any new water and sewer lines that will be servicing this particular subdivision are going to be coming in through pre-engineered, predetermined routes.
Does easing of, or does granting a variance for the side yard easement affect the setback for the buildings in any way, or are those 2 completely separate items?
Well, it's an excellent question. In the RP3, the zoning, which just another quick one-on-one on variances, the only way that a variance can be granted to the zoning ordinance is through the Board of Zoning Appeals, the BZA. You all have the authority to grant variances to your subdivision regulations because you are the final authority for all subdivisions in the city and even outside the city. So the zoning code specifies building setbacks. The subregs specify the 7.5-foot utility easement. In the RP3 zoning district, there actually is no side setback. What it identifies is it says that the side setback shall conform to the drainage and utility easement. So it effectively means that that the side setback is 7.5 feet, but if it's lowered to 5 feet through your authority, through the subregs, then the zoning code simply slides 2.5 feet along with your variance. Does that make sense?
So houses could be built with just 10 feet between them?
They could,
If we approve
theoretically,
this.
and they have been up along Cottages at Cedar Rock, or in Cottages at Cedar Rock along Brinkley's Way, and that's so that is meeting a particular market demand. But yes, they could be. Now they can't be any closer than 10 feet because
Fire code.
now we're going to get into a third code, and that's the
Fire
building
code.
code.
Oh.
So the fire code. So the fire code or the building code prohibits any closer than 10 feet.
Preston, by granting these variances, is that not almost suggesting to developers that they can get away with putting in more units than what is initially intended in a particular area? Or am I incorrect in that assumption?
I would argue that no, that is not the case. And in that, again, back to the difference between the subregs and the zoning is what drives the density.
Okay.
And so the RP3 has a particular density cap. And so the developer, regardless of the subdivision design, and regardless of whether or not it's even single family, duplex, or multifamily, the developer is capped at a particular density in the RP3. Once they know that, and they have that entitlement in their hand, then they go and they work with their surveyor and engineer to design the subdivision. Reducing the side yard utility and drainage easement by 2.5 feet on the lots, I don't believe is going to gain additional lots. What it does is it allows them to build a larger home on a smaller lot. And that is quite popular now in the market. People are wanting less yard to take care of. It's very popular with the patio homes, especially those that are universal design, meaning that are friendly with ADA individuals and those who might be aging. I'm not sure whether or not these are going to be 2-story. The ones out on Brinkley's Way are 2-story, so those are not universal design, but again, a very popular product in the market today.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any additional questions of staff? Have any members of the public either sent emails or called in wishing to talk about this particular item?
I would have to rely on Ms. Graham if there's anybody in the green room. I received an email this afternoon from the developer asking about the meeting time and all that kind of stuff. So the developer may be in the green room, but otherwise I received no other emails or phone calls.
I do have one in the waiting room.
Okay. Wendy, if you could go ahead and allow the person in the waiting room to speak. If you would just start by giving us your name and address, we'd love to hear your input on this item.
Hi, this is Chuck Grimm. I live at 274 Imperium Avenue, which is in the neighborhood of where this development is taking place. My only concern is regards to the side setback. I think from a standpoint of the aesthetics of the neighborhood and the existing patio homes that are in the neighborhood that are across the street, we're going to get an imbalance in the neighborhood and would suggest that the setbacks stay at the 7.5 feet rather than reducing it and having a completely different profile for the neighborhood.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Graham. We appreciate that input.
Thank you.
Preston, I have a few questions. What did water and sanitation? I assume that they said this was fine for this development.
You mean for the final plat itself or for the request?
For the request.
Yes, I did not receive any negative comments on the particular request. Now, I'm not sure if Travis is on the line. I believe that Alan Cantrell and Lawrence Perry are on the line, so they may be able to answer specifically from engineering, but I did not receive any negative commentary from either department regarding the 2.5 foot request.
This is Travis Olinger with Johnson City Water Sewer. I am on the line, Preston.
Thank you, Travis.
To answer your question, Mr. Commissioner, we are not exactly comfortable with making this a habit. However, Preston spoke very accurately about the previous situation that was at Cottages at Cedar Rock, in that that area was vastly served, basically, and we looked at it systematically in line with the construction plans to see if it was necessary for services. In this situation, for the phase 1 plat, we identified a lift station that could be phased out, and we requested that they actually provide a 15-foot easement on the eastern side along the open space that abuts Greenwood Drive, to allow for the future phase out if that happens, and they have if that becomes foreseeable or an option for us, and they did provide that on this plat. So we picked up a little easement there, and we were able to give up easements that we didn't really need. So it was looked at from that perspective.
So at the end of the day, Travis, your concerns and needs are basically addressed.
Yes, sir.
Thanks.
This is Alan Cantrell. I'm going to speak for the Public Works Department from a drainage viewpoint. These easements, whether it be 7.5 or 5 feet, give us a total of 15, as was explained, or 10 feet. They're very important to Public Works in the sense that whether it be 5 or 10 or 15 feet wide, when people put their downspouts down to the ground and it starts flowing water across yards, these easements end up being places where water can encroach a little bit beyond a property line and do so legally. Although the easement is really for the city, as was explained, it's also helpful to allow the private homeowners a place for their water to flow between homes. I think the first place we ever did this in is Cardinal Forest about 10 years ago, where the houses are closer together. And we had to debate, was 10 feet going to be good enough, or do we still need to hang with 15? And for this local drainage, just from downspouts, from roofs, we think 10 feet is okay. If we see a design where they're going to bury a pipe along that property line, 10 feet is not okay, and we need to go to the 15. This particular plat has no buried pipes along the property lines, so we're okay in this case with 5 feet. But we need to really think about these things in the future and make sure, and we do this at the staff level before it ever reaches you. We analyze whether or not we can go with the recommendation. And we're okay with this as we were with Cardinal Forest years ago, and also with Cedar Rock recently, and now this.
Do we think this affects like the quality of life at all for the people who will be residing in these homes, to have their neighbors, instead of being 15 feet away, being 10 feet away? In a negative, I guess my question is, I know it affects the quality, but yeah, does it affect it in a negative way? That's my question.
That sounds like a planning related question, so I'll jump back in. I would actually argue that there's much to be said for the urbanization of our suburbs. Now, the additional density and urban form out in the suburbs, it's important to always look at, where you're doing that geographically. Are you doing that amongst, out in farmland, or are you doing it in an area that is already well developed with public infrastructure and other services? So providing for these smaller lots that are closer together, I think is, harkens back to a type of development that occurred in the early 1900s, where you had traditional development in gridded networks with alleys and that kind of thing. Now, I realize that the alleys are not coming back at the rate that some who are in support of pure urbanism would like, but this particular product is one that has really taken hold. And so I think that that a difference of 5 feet, I realize that 5 feet's just not much less than me, because I'm a shorty, but I think that it's negligible in terms of quality of life for these particular individuals who are purchasing these homes.
Preston, if this is approved by us this evening, does it go any further, or is that the end of it?
This would be it, because you are the authority for the subdivision regulations.
Okay.
So
Preston,
what
did the developer give us a, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, so again, the way the process works is that the zoning was done at the end of last year. That's what essentially offered the entitlements that he's developing under. The density, the setbacks, the land uses, all of those types of things were established under the RP3. And then he comes forward with the preliminary plat saying to you all, hey, I got my zoning, I got my entitlements. Here's how I kind of want to lay it out. And then once you all give the green light on the preliminary plat, that's when he says, okay, I've gotten the green light on the preliminary plat. Now I can go spend a big chunk of change on the construction drawings, because the construction drawings are just that. And so once he gets that done, now he's underway, he's under construction horizontally. Before he can go and sell any lots and start building the homes, he has to get the final plat approved. So I think that what is on the table tonight is a request to be able to just start selling lots, because what he is showing you is he is consistent with his preliminary plat, and he has developed the land consistent with the construction drawings minus those 3 areas. But he is consistent with previous actions that either the city commission has taken or you've taken. This is just asking for that last hurdle so he can sell lots. So I think from a policy perspective, what's not on the table is the development type or the density. What's on the table tonight is he kind of following through with what he promised, which he is, and then here at the last minute, he's asking, hey, I've got a particular builder that's asking to do a product that could be 10 feet apart from each other. You've granted this in other areas. Are you okay with that? And so, it comes down just to a really a geographic decision if you feel that it's appropriate in this area.
And I guess the last question, Preston, did the developer give a reason why he was asking for the variance? And I guess the question I have is, a similar concern that Travis voiced earlier, is that we're perhaps setting a precedent that all developers could ask for this variance. And if we are planning for, we've had some pretty big storms recently, we've had a lot of water, and if that continues to have, the effects of climate change, is this something that we're going to regret in 20 years? Do you guys have reservations about almost setting a precedent for this, given the type of storms we're having and the type of water that we're being inundated with?
Sure. Well, I couldn't responsibly answer in terms of the stormwater. I would want to rely on engineering to do that. But I can say that just from a planning perspective, from a land use perspective, this is a product that is being desired right now. And so, it's just a simple supply and demand. And so it's being provided, and they are literally flying off the shelves, and meaning that the builder is selling these homes and building them, or he's literally selling them and building them as fast as he can, and not one is remaining vacant. In fact, the homes on Brinkley's Way sold the way it was described to me 60 days before they anticipated. So they had fully sold Brinkley's Way in April, and they were expecting a midsummer completion or kind of final sale on that. So the uptake, so to speak, in this area has been great. There's a particular demand and there's a product being provided that is, I wouldn't go so far as to say inconsistent, but it's bumping up against this particular 7.5-foot utility easement. This does not mean that that this particular product is going to be the only type of single-family housing product that we get from here on out in Johnson City. I know that there are many other products, residential products, being offered and that are being taken. So this is not it for the residential products. And then there was another point I was going to make and it just left me, but
I guess I was asking about the precedent. Are you concerned at all about a precedent that we're setting?
No, but see, it's easy for me as a staff member to say to you, and I've said this before in my previous location, because it really matters not, it crosses over state boundaries, and that is that your decision is not precedent setting. I realize that politically and internally as board members, you feel an obligation maybe sometimes to vote or act in a way that is consistent with previous actions. But you're under no obligation to vote the exact same way. So, for example, with this one, I gave you the example that you voted on Cottages at Cedar Rock to reduce it. So there was an example set somewhere else in the city, but you're under zero obligation no obligation to adhere to that tonight. And so precedence comes from court cases. This is where, I'm starting to get into dangerous zone. But the court identifies precedents. Land use decisions made by you all and by the city commission are not precedent setting. Each one is unique and independent and context sensitive.
Commissioner Whitfield, I see this as a classic example of with staff taking the lead of us creating some flexibility that still makes things work. We've heard both from Alan and from Travis that given the other compromise or the other things that the developer has provided them, that they're satisfied that we are prepared for the future. Now, global warming, who knows? But I think at least on paper, given the world we're living in and the regulations we're living in today, it sounds like this is a great example of us making it work, making the opportunity work. And we sure need some examples of cooperation with the developers, because I think we still have some PR that we need to do in that regard.
Thank you.
Wendy, has anybody else called in wishing to speak?
No, ma'am.
I have a question for Alan. Alan, are you still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
The future street allowance that's left between the lots right at the head of Trillium Trail.
Yes,
I think it's a 50-foot wide allowance left for that. Does that accommodate the standards for a public street with sidewalks on both sides?
Yes, it does. That will fit the local street standard. It's a little larger than the lane. And as you go back into the future part, the right-of-ways may get narrower as you go back in there, but as you come out, 50 feet is sufficient.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing if we haven't heard any.
Hang on one
no
second,
else.
Madam Chair. Someone, I think, called Matt's phone.
Yeah. The
Oh.
developer called to get the meeting ID information.
Okay.
So he may be calling in.
We could put that slide back up then, and we'll leave the public hearing officially open for a few more minutes if he wants to call in. I'm going to give just a different perspective. If I recall correctly, there was quite a bit of public opposition when we approved this the first time. We did approve it, and I feel very confident about that decision because it did meet the appropriate, all of the appropriate requirements in terms of numbers of units and everything else based on the acreage. But I'm a little concerned hearing the opposition from a resident now that they're concerned about how it is going to look compared to the other current homes that are in that area when we had so much opposition the first time too. So I'm not completely comfortable with the side yard variance or the easement variance as much as I am with the rest of this. And Wendy, has that developer called in yet?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Chairman Wild, while we wait, this is Clay Hickson.
Yeah.
I would ask Preston, so we've had a couple of these come up, and there seems to be, but proven to be demand in the marketplace for this type of product. Instead of issuing, I guess what we're asking is to approve a plat with a variance to the zoning code tonight is what we're being asked.
No, I'm sorry.
No.
Real quick.
Clarify that for me.
Yeah, the zoning code can only be varied by the Board of Zoning Appeals. You are granting a variance to the subdivision regulations.
The subdivision regulations. That's
You
right.
have
Okay.
authority.
Okay. Thanks for the clarification there. Should we be looking to modify the subdivision regulations to have different regulations per is there the R2A, is that offer some more flexibility, or is there a more standard zone that would accommodate this type of development in an instance where we all agree that it's best suited for the community?
I think that it really goes back to Dr. Whitfield's question. And I think that it's important for both our water and sewer department as well as for our engineering department to that 7.5 feet and potentially 15 feet is important to maintain. And I think that needs to be the standard. Again, that's why it goes back to the comment that I made that this particular type of product is not going to be the only type of residential product that we get in our community. This is one particular product, happens to be really hot right now, but it's not the only product we are getting or will get. And so I think that it's important to maintain that 15-foot or 7.5-foot per lot standard, and then allow based on individual circumstances. Again, that's why it goes back to the importance that land use decisions are not precedent setting. That go and then look at the individual circumstances, the geography, the context, the lay of the land, the comments by water and sewer, the comments by engineering. I think it's important that we take each one under consideration. And I know that that's probably somewhat frustrating or can grow weary over time. But that's what you all are doing. You're doing the good hard work of the Planning Commission. And I think it's important that you look at each site independent of the other. But I do think that the standard is set in the subregs and is adequate for the needs of our community.
Okay.
Thanks. That's very helpful, Preston. I appreciate it.
Okay, Wendy, one more time. Has anybody called in?
Yes, I have someone. Hang on.
Okay, would you please put them through? Hello, if you would give us your name and address, we'd love to hear the comments that you have regarding this issue.
Yes, my name is Tim Carter. I'm the developer, or one of the developers, and my address is 116 Stonehenge Drive, Bristol, Tennessee.
Okay.
I just wanted to call in and give some of the reasoning behind what we've done. One of the things that we have been trying to do is meet more of a millennial type of housing demand that's out there right now, which our property, where it was rezoned, we could probably put in about 100 units if we'd put them attached units, but the market right now is wanting a smaller lot, but they want single family homes. So we're trying to satisfy that need. If we had put, 8 units in a row, there'd be no side yard. They'd all have a common wall. But because of the marketplace right now, it looks like this is what is in demand. It's like I said, the millenniums, they want a smaller lot, less to take care of, and just sort of the trend that things are going. And that's what we tried to do. We did not try to maximize getting as many units on that property as possible. If we'd done that, I think, and Preston may correct me, but I thought it was 15 units per acre. And we're at 66, and I think we have 11 acres. So, we're quite a bit under that.
Thank you.
But I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Carter. We do appreciate that input. Does anybody have a specific question for the developer?
No, I just want to say thank you again to Mr. Carter for calling in. That's very helpful.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Well, I apologize. It took me a while. I couldn't get the phone number. I didn't write it down when it was up, and I assumed it would be available. But in a multi-family building where you may have 5 to 10 units, you serve them all from the road or from the back or from the front. We do these houses the same way. We serve them from the front and the back, so it's not important to have a lot of easement in between them. We do put especially drain ditches down through the center of them. We especially engineer that where 10 feet is plenty of room. But I just wanted to let you know we're not trying to squeeze in more units. If we were trying to do that, we would have done duplexes or done 4 or 5 plexes or something like that. We're trying to answer and provide the housing that the public is demanding right now.
Thank you. That is very beneficial.
Well, thank you.
Okay, Wendy, are there any other individuals who've called in?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and are there any emails received or other information since we've opened this public hearing? All right, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and officially close the public hearing and open the floor for additional comments from the commissioners or for a motion.
Madam Chairwoman, if I could, I think I've held the same reservations you have about granting this easement, especially hearing from the citizen who called in to express their concerns. But I think granted, given what we heard from Travis and from the engineering department and from Preston and from the developer themselves, I think my kind of concerns have been quaylaid at this point. And so I think the easement's probably a fine idea. And so if no one else has anything else to say, I'd like to go ahead and make my trifecta for the day and have a
Please
motion.
do. It's called a hat trick.
The hat trick, thank you.
Yes.
I got the hat for it too. Let's go ahead and make a motion to approve the plat before us, the final plat, with the, Preston, you might have to help me out on this, with the requested easement as well as the 3 requirements that must be fulfilled before final approval. Is that correct?
That was adequate, yes. Just confirming the easement reduction along the side lot lines by 2.5 feet.
That's correct.
Yep.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there additional discussion? Hearing none, Nicole, would you please call the roll?
Vice Chairman Cooper,
Yes.
Commissioner Calhoun,
Yes.
Commissioner Dagenhart,
Yes.
Commissioner Hickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Whitfield,
Yes.
Commissioner Aldridge,
Yes.
and Madam Chair Wild.
Yes.
Motion approved as stated.
Okay. All right. That concludes our new business. So the next item on our agenda is under other, and it is the Planning Commission Subcommittee reports. So I'm going to open this one back up to Mr. Manley. He has been working with the Bridge Plan Committee, which is also our long range subcommittee.
Yeah, just to be brief here, the Bridge Plan Committee has continued to be very diligent. We've been meeting regularly, continuing to review the plan. We have finished the review and the assessment and finalized the draft documents of all the recommendations for each element. They are being posted on the website along with information about our public input process. So I just wanted to provide an update on that. In particular, we are scheduled for next Tuesday at 5:30 at Memorial Park and with a virtual option, a hybrid meeting for the citizens of Johnson City to weigh in on the bridge plan. They can go to the website, review the documents in advance, or they can just tune in and stream to hear a presentation on the high points. The bridge plan itself is all text. 99% of it is text. So we will be kind of presenting that in a way that's more digestible than just reading it straight through. But there will also be a recording of that meeting that will be put on the website so people can check out the presentation later. So we're providing a variety of opportunities as well as the in-person meeting next Tuesday. So I encourage you to participate and especially our Bridge Plan Committee folks to be able to participate. We've already prepared for that, to have different roles and responsibilities for that, so that we can get good public input, answer questions, and continue the process with that input from the general public. Moving forward, looking into November and December, we will be coming back to the Planning Commission for a workshop, which we need to schedule about an hour or an hour and a half in advance of one of our regular Planning Commission meetings. So the 8th of December, we'd be looking at that date for a 4:30, 5 o'clock meeting, workshop meeting to go over the presentation of the bridge plan prior to your consideration of adoption later on at that same meeting. We had previously planned to do that in November, but with me going on leave, it seemed a little bit short to try and do a workshop in November. So that could still happen, still possibility, but we'll finalize those details and get back to you on whether that would be a workshop in November or a workshop in December with adoption to follow later at the official meeting and public hearing in December. That would be the role of the Planning Commission left. It would still move on to the City Commission for 3 readings from starting in December and finishing in January. But we've had a very aggressive timeline, and we continue to pursue that. And so far, we're doing good. So we'll keep it moving forward. Legislative Committee met to review those text amendments that were passed tonight. So that's the only update from that. Current land use has not met, and we'll be looking for opportunities to get that group together as necessary moving forward. The only other update I have is on the area rezoning for West Watauga, which was brought to you last month. Just wanted to briefly update that we do have a neighborhood meeting scheduled. This is staff initiated. We are hosting folks in the parking lot at Founders Park right off Commerce Street. We have a large tent, have coffee, and have a Saturday morning meeting to meet with that neighborhood, that block of folks right there in that West Watauga area, to let them know about that proposed area rezoning. And so if anyone's interested, you're welcome to come attend that and hear from the folks in that neighborhood. That's on October 24th at 9 a.m. And that's it for updates from me.
Thank you, Mr. Manley.
You're welcome.
Are there additional?
Want to make sure that I'm not missing something from the agenda, Madam Chair. No. So if I could just make one other announcement. I did not hear the very first part of the meeting. I was concluding conversation with folks from our 5 o'clock neighborhood meeting on another item that will be brought to you in either November or December. So I don't know if this was mentioned, but I do want to officially mention to those of you who may not already be aware that Hassan Bernard, who is our development coordinator, has moved on, and he has become the assistant planning director in Olive Branch, Mississippi, which is a lovely community of around 35,000 in the suburbs of Memphis. So we wish him well and very excited for his new opportunity. This is obviously a step up for him as AD, and he has family and his wife has family in the Memphis area. So we wish him well. He may even be watching right now. But if you are Hassan, you're missed. But congrats and best wishes to you and your future and your growing family. Hassan was out in September through most of September because they had a new baby girl, I believe, right? A new baby girl. And so growing family, and they're doing great. In fact, it's kind of funny. He timed it in a way where his first day was yesterday. So he did not take any time off. So from this point forward, we have already advertised through our Human Resources Department to hire another development coordinator. But I am very excited and proud to say that in the interim, Matt Manley is, as you've already witnessed here tonight, stepping in as your liaison to the Planning Commission. Matt continues to be the liaison to the Historic Zoning Commission, does a phenomenal job working with that board and with Chairman Brand, as well as the other board members. Matt, even before Hassan's departure, had stepped back into the Planning Commission role from a long-range planning perspective, obviously leading our bridge plan effort, but also getting back involved with the legislative work, such as the text amendments. But now Matt is your primary liaison, just as he is with the Historic Zoning Commission, and doing a fantastic job. And so feel free to reach out to him directly or reach out to, as always, myself or Ms. Lawrence. So just wanted to mention that. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Preston. All right, is there any other items for discussion amongst any of the commissioners? I want to give a personal thanks again to particularly the Bridge Plan Committee. Matt is doing a phenomenal job working with the committee, and Commissioner Dagenhart has been serving as a chair, but also Commissioner Hickson and Commissioner Pavlich. They've been meeting at least weekly, sometimes semi-weekly. It's been a very aggressive meeting schedule, and so really is appreciated how much time and effort has gone in from them and from all of the other committee members as well. All right, if I'm not hearing any other discussion topics, I am looking for a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Oh, Preston's opposed. Or is that a waving goodbye, or are you opposed?
Waving goodbye.
Yeah. All right. I thought you were opposed there. Good night, everybody. Get well soon, Tembra. Hope you feel much better.